June 6, 1943. Dawn breaks over occupied France. High above the clouds, a man named Hedman Klaus Dupner patrols the sky. He is no ordinary pilot. He is a Luftwaffe ace, 31 confirmed kills. He has survived the Battle of Britain. He has chased Spitfires across hostile skies. He has torn through hurricanes above the English Channel. Years of combat have taught him every weakness his enemies possess. He knows when they hesitate. He knows when they bleed speed. And he knows exactly how to finish them. Beneath him is the aircraft he trusts more than anything else. The Messerschmitt Bf 109. Light, sharp, aggressive. It climbs faster than British fighters. Turns tighter. Responds instantly. For 3 straight years, nothing the Allies fly can match it. Or so he believes. Because this morning, Dupner is about to meet an aircraft that will shatter everything he thinks he knows about aerial combat. An American fighter. The P-47 Thunderbolt. He is not worried. Intelligence reports describe it as slow, overbuilt, clumsy, a brute force machine with no finesse. Too heavy. Too American. Dupner has read those reports. So have his fellow aces. They all trust them. What none of them realize is that those reports are already outdated. At 8,000 feet, Dupner spots the American aircraft. Immediately, instinct takes over. He climbs. Altitude is dominance. From above, he controls the fight. From above, the enemy reacts. At 12,000 feet, the Bf 109 becomes a predator. The Americans should try to climb, should try to escape upward. But the Thunderbolt does something unthinkable. It dives. Not shallow, not hesitant, straight down. Dupner freezes for a split second. A pilot who gives up altitude gives up the battle. That rule has never failed him, not once, in 3 years of war. He pushes forward and follows. This should be easy. He expects the distance to close. A expects gun range. Instead, the gap widens. The P-47 accelerates, 350 miles per hour. Seabay, Sibaiwusher. The American keeps diving. Dupner forces his aircraft harder. The controls stiffen. The airframe begins to shudder. At 480 miles per hour, the Bf 109 reaches its limit. The wings tremble. The fuselage groans. 1 more second, and the aircraft will tear itself apart. Dupner has no choice. He pulls up. Below him, the Thunderbolt keeps going. 500 miles per hour. Wubauerscher. The American pilot is flying comfortably at speeds that would rip the German fighter to pieces. Then, at the bottom of the dive, the impossible happens. The P-47 pulls back. Smooth, controlled, no violent shake, no structural failure. At over 520 miles per hour, the massive fighter recovers effortlessly and climbs. Not slowly, powerfully, at high speed. The Thunderbolt becomes untouchable. Dupner watches helplessly as the American aircraft rises above him and vanishes into the sky. The entire encounter lasts 90 seconds. 90 seconds. Dupner never fires a single round, never gains an advantage, never controls the fight. From the first dive to the final climb, the American pilot dictates everything. Not with tactics, not with experience, but with physics. In that moment, Dupner understands something that sends a chill through him. The instant the P-47 pilot pushed the nose down, the battle was already lost. There was no counter, no maneuver, no clever trick. The Bf 109 simply could not follow. And for the first time in the war, German air superiority met something it could not outthink or outfly. The moment the American aircraft pitched downward, Dupner knew the fight was finished. There was nothing left to prove in the sky. He returned to his base without a word. On the ground, his wingmen pressed him for answers. What had gone wrong? How had the encounter ended so quickly? Dupner stayed silent. There was no way to explain how an aircraft labeled inferior had stripped him of control so completely, because everything German air doctrine had taught him was suddenly wrong. For the entire war, Luftwaffe tactics revolved around one belief: win the turning battle, outturn the enemy, force them to bleed speed, finish them when they can no longer maneuver. The Bf-109 excelled at this. It could circle tighter than the Spitfire, and against the enormous P-47, it should have been effortless. Every seasoned German pilot knew the math. At low altitude, in a prolonged turn fight, the Thunderbolt would lose. On paper, it was guaranteed. But there was something the paper never accounted for. Turning costs energy, and energy is speed. The P-47 possessed speed reserves the Bf-109 could never touch, especially at altitude. This was no longer a tactical failure. It was a numerical one. At the heart of the Thunderbolt was the Pratt & Whitney R 2800 double wasp, 2,000 horsepower at sea level. But what made it deadly was not just raw power, it was endurance. A revolutionary turbo supercharger allowed the engine to hold that output as it climbed. At 20,000 feet, at 25,000 feet, innertradio, 0 feet, where other engines suffocated in thin air, the P-47 thrived. Most engines lost power as oxygen vanished. The Thunderbolt did not. Its exhaust gases spun a turbine that crushed thin air back into usable density. While others weakened, the P-47 was only warming up. The Bf-109, by contrast, relied on the Daimler-Benz DB605. A solid engine, well-engineered, rated at 1,475 horsepower under ideal conditions. But by 1943, ideal conditions no longer existed. Germany's fuel system was collapsing. Refineries were burning. Synthetic fuel plants were sabotaged from within. Supplies reaching the front were degraded and impure. Engines were being fed poison. As a result, DB605 seconds rarely reached their rated output. Instead of 1,475 horsepower, they produced closer to 1,200, sometimes less. German pilots were flying at 80% power. In a war that demanded everything, the P-47, meanwhile, delivered 2,000 horsepower as standard. And when water injection was engaged, that number surged to 2,800 horsepower, briefly, brutally. This was not a gap of 200 horsepower. It was a chasm. 800 horsepower. 1, 0, 0 horsepower. Sometimes more. This wasn't simply better engineering. It was two different industrial realities colliding in the sky. In his combat report, Dupner wrote something unprecedented. He stated that the P-47 could not be effectively engaged under any circumstances. In a climb, it outperformed him. In a dive, it escaped effortlessly. In turns, it conserved energy better. There was only one rational option: avoid combat or accept defeat. His commanders rejected the report. They called it defeatist. They said German pilots had overcome worse situations. They insisted bravery and discipline could overcome material disadvantages. They claimed the Thunderbolt was exaggerated. Dupner knew better. This had nothing to do with courage. This was physics, and physics does not bend to ideology. German engineers could design exceptional engines. That was never the issue. The problem was building them. The Daimler-Benz plant in Stuttgart was under constant attack. In a single month, more than 200 tons of bombs fell on the facility. Workers rebuilt. The bombers returned. Production stopped, then resumed, then stopped again. Between August 1943 and May 1944, Stuttgart was struck 47 times. Each raid dropped hundreds, sometimes thousands of tons of explosives. The factories were reconstructed 17 times. By May 1944, output had collapsed to just 60 engines per month. 2 years earlier, that same plant produced 800 engines monthly. The facility at Friedrichshafen suffered similar damage. Germany wasn't losing pilots. It was losing time. And time, unlike courage, could not be replaced. The engine plant at Wiener Neustadt lay in ruins. And it wasn't alone. Every facility capable of producing high-performance aircraft engines had become a target. The Allied strategy was ruthless and precise. Germany's ability to build powerful engines was being erased piece by piece. While across the Atlantic, America was manufacturing engines faster than Germany could ever hope to destroy them. The numbers told a brutal story. Germany rolled out roughly 300 Bf 109 seconds per month. The United States produced nearly 2,000 P-47 seconds every single month. Even if Germany miraculously solved its engine crisis right now, this very moment, the clock was unforgiving. 18 months to design a new engine, 6 months of testing, 3 months to retool factories, 2 more months before production could even begin. That was 30 months, at minimum, before a new fighter could reach the front. In that same time span, America would build 50,000 Thunderbolts. How does a nation compete with that? It doesn't, because the war had crossed an invisible line. This was no longer about sharper tactics, no longer about elite pilots. It had become a contest of industrial power, and America dominated every category that mattered. German engineers tried anyway. They pushed out an upgraded variant, the Bf109G. It carried a stronger engine, a pressurized cockpit that allowed pilots to climb higher, where thinner air once favored German design. The ceiling rose to 23,000 feet, surpassing the earlier Bf109F. But improvement came at a cost. Armor was added to protect pilots. Fuel tanks were enlarged for longer range. Landing gear was reinforced to handle the extra weight. Each upgrade made the aircraft heavier. Yes, it was about 20 miles per hour faster than its predecessor. But it no longer danced through the sky. Turns were slower. Controls felt stiff. Pilots noticed immediately. This didn't feel like the fighter they had mastered. It felt compromised. Across the front lines, the P-47 evolved without hesitation. The early Razorback canopy was replaced with a full bubble canopy, giving pilots uninterrupted visibility in every direction. The propeller was redesigned wider blades that grabbed the air with authority. Takeoffs became shorter. Acceleration improved. Climb performance surged. Each new Thunderbolt variant didn't just match the previous one. It surpassed it. The distance between the two aircraft wasn't shrinking. It was expanding. Month by month, the gap grew wider. Every updated P-47 arriving in Europe outperformed Germany's response. Germany was always reacting, always late, always chasing an enemy already moving ahead. Over the next 6 months, Dupner flew 47 combat missions against P-47 seconds. He recorded 3 confirmed kills, 4 additional damaged aircraft. In return, he lost 8 wingmen, 8 pilots under his command, gone forever. Against the Thunderbolt, his kill-to-loss ratio fell to 0.37 to 1. Against Spitfires, it had once been 3.2 to 1. He wasn't suddenly a worse pilot. American pilots weren't 8 times better. The system was. The P-47 wasn't just an aircraft. It was part of an ecosystem that overwhelmed everything in its path. That's when Dupner understood the truth. The war had changed. The era of the lone ace was finished. Victory no longer belonged to the best individual flyer. It belonged to the side that built better machines, trained faster, and replaced losses instantly. Germany could repair planes. Germany could rebuild factories. But Germany could not replace pilots. An American fighter pilot arrived at combat with 300 flight hours behind him. A German pilot in 1943 had 120 hours, sometimes fewer. The American training system produced 50 fully trained fighter pilots every month. Germany produced 20, often less, and those pilots entered combat with half the experience. Every German pilot lost was a permanent loss, and the sky was running out of veterans. For every American pilot who fell, another stepped forward. Not from desperation, from depth. Behind the front lines waited nearly 200,000 trained pilots, ready to be deployed. The supply never ran dry. Germany had no such reserve. Its pipeline was exhausted. No strategy could solve that imbalance. The numbers alone sealed the outcome. By the time the war neared its end, Dubner had logged 87 confirmed victories. He was decorated, respected, regarded as one of the Luftwaffe's finest. But hope had left him. Not because of fear, but because he understood something others refused to face. The Luftwaffe had not lost the skies to superior aviators. It had lost them because each day brought more P-47 seconds overhead and fewer Bf-109 seconds to meet them. Because American factories replaced aircraft faster than Germany could destroy them. Because once control of the system is lost, bravery cannot reclaim it. The Bf-109 still excelled in one narrow arena: turning. It was lighter, sharper, responsive to the smallest input. A true pilot's machine. But dominance in a single dimension means nothing when the enemy holds superiority in 5. Speed, climb, dive, energy retention, firepower. The balance was no longer close. Dubner survived the war. In May 1945, he was taken prisoner by American forces. He spent 2 years behind barbed wire. Released in 1947, he returned to civilian life. When he died in 1982, one belief never left him. The war was not lost to better pilots. It was lost to better systems. The Americans did not defeat the Luftwaffe through superior tactics or clever maneuvers. They won by building more aircraft, training more pilots, producing more engines. They created an industrial machine so vast, so efficient, that the Luftwaffe could not endure within it. Against that scale, individual courage became irrelevant. The encounter between Dubner and the P-47 represents something larger than a dogfight. It marks the moment air warfare changed forever. From a contest of individual skill to a competition of systems. The Bf-109 was an extraordinary aircraft, elegant, precise, and alive in a pilot's hands. The P-47 was not beautiful in the same way. But it did not need to be. It belonged to a system. A training pipeline that produced 200,000 pilots, a manufacturing effort that built 15,600 Thunderbolts between 1,941 and 1,945, an engine program that produced 125,000 Pratt and Whitney R2000 800 seconds, powering not just the P-47, but an entire air force. The Thunderbolt was not just a fighter. It was the hardened tip of a massive industrial spear. And that spear crushed the Luftwaffe, not with brilliance, but with relentless pressure. This was the lesson Dubner learned too late. The lesson that would shape warfare for the next 100 years. Courage cannot defeat systems. Skill cannot outpace production. Individual excellence cannot overcome organizational dominance. The skies over Europe were not claimed by the greatest aces. They belonged to the side that built the strongest system, and the German pilots were never inferior. They were simply outnumbered by history. They were not defeated by a lack of bravery. They were facing something far larger than any individual could overcome. A system so vast, so relentless, that personal heroism no longer mattered. The Bf-109 was never a failure. It was an exceptional machine, precise, responsive, and deadly in the right hands. But brilliance in design cannot compete with overwhelming scale. By the time Dubner was taken prisoner in May 1945, the Luftwaffe was no longer a fighting force. Not because its pilots had broken, but because the force opposing them had crushed the foundations beneath their wings. The P-47 Thunderbolt ended the war with an official kill-to-loss ratio exceeding 4-1. It flew more than 500,000 combat missions. It destroyed thousands of enemy aircraft and tens of thousands of vehicles on the ground. The fighter once mocked by German pilots as a clumsy flying milk bottle became the weapon that sealed their defeat. Thank you for watching Tales of Valor. If this story resonated with you, the moment when a pilot realized that courage alone could not overcome systems, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more overlooked World War II stories. On this channel, we tell history through the eyes of those who lived it. German pilots, learning why superior tactics could not overcome superior engines. Japanese officers, discovering that battlefield brilliance meant nothing without industrial power. American soldiers realizing that wars are ultimately decided in factories, not trenches. Let us know in the comments what forgotten air battles or untold stories you want us to explore next. Where are you watching from today? Which moments in military history leave the deepest impact on you? Your support helps us continue uncovering the stories that explain how modern warfare truly works. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting this channel. Keep sharing these stories. Keep remembering the battles history nearly forgot.